Welcome back, levelers, to another episode of High Level Chronicles. So, as always, I'm your host, Chris. I'm joined by my co-pilot in this high-flying adventure, Paul. What's happening, brother?
Hey, man, pretty fast week. Leveled up on a couple stuff right now, enjoying some Northern Lights. My wife and I have finished the first season of a Apple show called Dark Matter. You familiar with it?
Yep.
Yeah. So highly recommend that. Multiple realities. And I've been playing this week. Don't make fun of me, but I've been playing a little bit of Stardew Valley. It's just a very chill game. I don't know if how familiar you were with that one, but yeah. Revisited my farm, checked out, and
Like Goat Simulator, right?
There's like little quests and stuff, a little bit of fighting ghosts and slimes and stuff. I don't know. I find it interesting from time to time, and for whatever reason, got a hair up my ass this week and enjoyed some of that.
Right on. But today, levelers, we're diving into some of the most talked about conspiracy theories out there. Specifically today, we're going to just touch a little bit because everybody knows we can go down days of rabbit holes talking about every single one of these, but we're going to talk about JFK. We're going to talk about 9/11. We're going to talk about Epstein Island, Epstein's death, and also the infamous MKUltra. So there's just way too many out there overall to cover in one episode. So if you all do like this episode and want to hear more conspiracy theories, thoughts, whatever it may be, hit us up, or maybe we'll try something new. If you want to debate some conspiracy theories with us, or maybe someone with an opposing view, hit us up. We've never had a dual guest episode, with different outlooks. So it could be really interesting. But first, you know what time it is. Before we dive in today's mind-bending episode, let's kick things off with our leveled up segment. Hit us up, highlevelchronicles.com or at HLC Podcast 420 on your favorite social. Let us know what you're leveling up on this week. What strain are you blazing? What games are melting your mind? What shows are you binging while lifted? Me, I've been on this amazing strain, man. It's called LA Kush Cake. It's a perfect hybrid, really balances out my gaming sessions. Speaking of which, I've started a new game. So, yeah, I've been diving into Elden Ring. New to me. That game is something else. The graphics are stunning, but let me tell you, bro, this shit is hard as hell. I tell you, I think I've been playing, I'd say right now, I've probably been playing for about 3 hours total combined of the game. I still don't have a fucking clue what I'm doing. I still can't beat anybody. I've spent the first hour just trying to figure out where to go. I don't know. It's rough, but something just keeps me going back to it, especially leveled up. Everything's just more vibrant. And the graphics, man, like I said, the graphics are just amazing. Sometimes I just walk around or hop on something and just look around and look up and see the planets in the sky and whatever else may be around. But yeah, it's been a blast. It's definitely been fun. You said what you were leveling up on. You had some edible whatever on the show. What about our levelers, man? What have they been leveling up on? You got anything out there from them?
Yeah, you got a few things. George K says, it's been a week of gelato. Super smooth, gets me relaxed and ready for some Call of Duty Warzone. And when I'm not gaming, I've been binge watching The Expanse. Just a fantastic series. I also recommend it. Sci-fi cannabis is a match made in heaven.
What's The Expanse? What is that? Do you know what that is?
The Expanse, I believe, is originally a novel series, but it is takes place about 1,000, 2,000 years into the future, where Mars has been colonized. Some of the moons of like Jupiter and Saturn have been colonized, and there's like intrigue. There's some fighting between Mars and Earth and the Belt, they call it. And there's one crew that kind of finds themselves in the middle of all like the big things going on in the Milky Way. And I think there's about 4 or 5 seasons of it. Highly recommend though. And 6 said, I've been puffing on some purple haze while replaying Skyrim for the millionth time. And that is something Skyrim players will tell you, myself included. I probably played, I don't know how many different run-throughs of Skyrim, but it's something that it's a game that people keep coming back to once they play it. Yeah, it's 14 years old at this point, but
I guess that's another game I'm going to have to add to my list to go back to, because it's one that I've never played.
I do, again, highly recommend it. There's something about those snowy mountains, wild plays, that just hits different. You know what I mean? Juniper Berry. I do.
Oh, it does. I don't. But I'll take your word for it, because we've heard our levelers talk about Elden Ring plenty of times, which is one of the reasons when I saw it on my Steam sale, I was like, you know what, let me just try it out. And I've heard they talk about the graphics, so I'm sure Skyrim's just as
it's smaller than Elden Ring, but a lot more easier.
Okay, well, look, I've been lost for 3 hours, so whatever. Maybe that's what I need to start with.
So, and then last but not least, we have Harold T. He says, I've been hitting on this new strain called Conspiracy Kush. Huh?
Isn't that fitting?
Yeah. It's got me questioning everything. As for games, I've been diving into Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Nothing like raiding monasteries. What replaced out of your mind?
Yeah, Assassin's Creed is great.
I've never played the Valhalla one, but I've seen people play it. And I was like,
I've played the Valhalla one either, but I've played many of the others. Great. So another week of excellent responses. And remember, levelers, share your experiences with us. We love hearing from you. But now that we're all nice and toasty, let's dive into today's topic. It's all about conspiracy theories. We're going to be exploring some of the most infamous conspiracy. I can't even talk today, man. Look, diving into some of the most infamous conspiracy theories out there, looking at arguments, for and against them. Remember, we're not here to push any agenda. We're just here to have an open discussion and maybe blow your mind a little bit. You know what I'm saying? You know what, man? I think we should kick things off with probably one of the biggest ones, which is JFK, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, the granddaddy of them all.
JFK. So for anyone who might not be familiar, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy was assassinated back in November 22nd, 1963 in Dallas. So Oswald, let's see, officially it was Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman, but this incident has spawned countless conspiracy theories over the years. And yet this one's definitely a rabbit hole for sure. Let's start with the official story. And then, what do you think? Well, then maybe I can just dive into some of the theories that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, according to the Warner Commission, which was established to investigate the assassination, Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. Oswald was a former Marine. He shot Kennedy from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. He fired 3 shots, 2 of which hit Kennedy, and then he was captured later that day, but was killed before ever reaching trial by Jack Ruby before he could ever, stand trial. The commission, that what it was exactly 2 days later.
Yeah.
The commission concluded there was no evidence of a conspiracy, either, domestic or international, but with anything involving a major political figure. Not everyone was satisfied with the explanation, right? So that's where conspiracy theories kick off. And what's one of the biggest ones you've heard about JFK?
I mean, this is something that happened at this point, 60 years ago, and there's been so much made about who was aiding and abetting Lee Harvey Oswald, because there's just the sense out there by some people on the more conspiratorial side that say that, well, it had to be someone, and it could be right wingers in Dallas that just hated the president for political reasons. He was a pretty progressive guy, and that this must have been a cabal of people on the opposite political spectrum. And the other two, I think, big ones that I'm familiar with is that, well, it actually was actors outside our government, with either Fidel Castro, the Cuban Missile Crisis that just happened. We were almost in nuclear war, and we were pretty hostile with Cuba at that time, and he wanted to get him back for that and the Bay of Pigs and sort of the interventions that we were doing down there. And then the biggest one, probably at the time, and still is that this was actually the communists in the Soviet Union that had infiltrated, had a sleeper cells in America, and they were going to take out the president of the United States, who was seen as, I think on the world stage as kind of new. He was young, untested. Excuse me. And this was going to be a way to destabilize the country and have the USSR on a higher international stage.
I think one of the most popular theories that I've heard is the grassy knoll theory. Are you familiar with that one?
Mm-hmm.
Witnesses claim that they heard shots coming from the grassy knoll in front of Kennedy's motorcade, suggesting there was a second shooter. And then there's that whole magic bullet theory. And this is the idea that one bullet caused multiple injuries to both Kennedy and the Texas governor at the time, John Connally. So they argue that the bullet's trajectory then makes no sense and it couldn't have caused all the damage it did. So, and like you said, he had other things going on, according to conspiracies. So, with issues, with Soviets, with Cuba. But let's not forget the possible involvement of the mafia. Kennedy's brother, Robert, was cracking down, on organized crime, which didn't sit well with mob bosses at that time. So some believe they orchestrated the assassination as a form of retaliation.
That's true. His father was kind of came to prominence from the Prohibition era and doing whiskey running. And so that could also be seen as kind of hypocritical, where it's like, hey, you guys were doing this organized crime during, the 1920s, 30s, and made a lot of money on that. And now, alcohol was obviously legal by this time. So they were getting more into the political realm and using money to fund that. And so why, they got theirs and then started cracking down on any other organized crime that was going on in the 60s, which was still pretty prevalent.
Right. And there's also the CIA theory. And this is, I think everybody knew that JFK had conflicts with the CIA over various issues. One of the big ones being the Bay of Pigs invasion. That's where Cuba comes in, right? So some think rogue elements within the CIA could have been involved in having assassinated. I think, though, on the flip side, there's strong arguments for supporting the official story, right? I mean, for starters, Oswald's background, he was a marksman in the Marines, right? The Marines are the shit, right? So it supports the idea that he could have easily made those shots. Plus, forensic evidence, including the Zapruder film that aligns with the trajectory of the shots coming from the Texas school book depository. The single bullet theory.
Yeah, it was a huge thing. And the Warren Commission and trying to put to rest any other conspiracy theories that, hey, probably was one guy, was a clear view of him going down the motorcade, getting shot, and the aftermaths of it.
And then as time progressed, they always go back and revisit cases. That whole single bullet theory, while it was complex, it's been supported by further analysis that has happened, using computer simulations that are available nowadays. And let's not forget they had numerous investigations. There was the House Select Committee on Assassinations. They had revisited the evidence and still largely support that it was just the lone Lee Harvey Oswald. So they did suggest, though, that there could have been a second shooter. But they didn't have any proof. There was nothing there. Have you heard the whole JFK? I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of this, but I can give you some little things on it. But the JFK and Abe Lincoln theory.
I haven't heard it as a theory, but I've heard it as there's these weird coincidences.
Well, that's the thing were they assassinated? This is where it's supposed to support the whole, maybe the CIA or another theory of essentially the government taking out JFK because they didn't like you said, some of the issues that he was doing. So some facts for some people here, and you all can make up your own mind on the whole A thing. I'll just run down for you. I wrote these down because I thought it was really interesting. I knew I'd heard it before, but so both of them were elected to Congress in 46. Lincoln was elected in 1846 from Illinois, and Kennedy in 1946 from Massachusetts. Both were elected to the presidency in 60. Lincoln in 1860 and Kennedy in 1960. Both of them, Lincoln and Kennedy, both have 7 letters in their last names. Both were concerned with civil rights, which the government at the time was majority against. Hence, a lot of these conspiracy theories. Lincoln felt strongly that all slaves should be freed and issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which legally freed the slaves within Confederacy. They didn't like that. Democrats didn't like that. They didn't want that. Kennedy was concerned with racial equality and was the first to propose what would be the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So they had a lot of things with that. Both of them had their own racial issues between them in their own respective times, of the year. Both were married in their 30s to women who were in their 20s, which, you can take that as you want. Both were shot on a Friday. Lincoln was actually shot on Good Friday, April 14th, 1865. And Kennedy was shot on November 22nd, 1963, which was a Friday. And both were shot in the head, right? Both of their successors, so their vice presidents, were named Johnson. So Lincoln was succeeded by Andrew Johnson and Kennedy by Lyndon B. Johnson. And then Lincoln had a secretary named Kennedy who told him not to go to Ford's Theater that evening. And Kennedy had a secretary named Evelyn Lincoln, and she told him, don't go to Dallas on this trip. So really weird. Both had security agents named William. This is where it's really weird. Named William, who died within 48 hours of attaining their 75 years and 3-month birthday. Lincoln's bodyguard, William H. Crook, was born in 1839, died in 1915. Kennedy's Secret Service agent, William Greer, was born in 1909 and died in 1985. So, like I said, they were both succeeded by Southerners, that's Johnson. Both of those Southerners, both of the successors, were born in 08. Andrew Johnson was born in 1808, and Lyndon B. Johnson was born in 1908. Both assassins, so we know John Wilkes Booth, right, murdered Kennedy, and Lee Harvey Oswald, or Kennedy, shit about that, yeah, I'm high, bro. Killed Lincoln. Lee Harvey Oswald killed Kennedy, and they're both known by 3 names. Yeah, John Wilkes Booth, Lee Harvey Oswald. Each assassin's full name is composed of 15 letters. Exactly. So here's where it gets even weirder with the assassins. Each assassin committed his crime while in the place where he was regularly employed. So Booth worked as an actor at Ford's Theater. Oswald was employed at Texas School Book Department. Dude, I'm telling you, man, there's a lot of coincidences. It is coincident. It's more likely coincidences, but that's where a lot of these theories come in, saying the government had JFK. Numerous reasons. It is weird when you think about all the coincidences between exactly 100 years apart, pretty much.
It is. And I think that is where a lot of conspiracy theories get their juice from, is everything starts to, isn't it weird? Have you ever noticed? And then it just kind of snowballs from there. It's like, oh, yeah, that is kind of weird. And then you get into your specific rabbit hole of that, and you say, oh, this is also weird. I didn't notice that. And then you start drawing conclusions from, especially if you're just drawing it from one type of source or one point of view. But yeah, that's just like another layer of the conspiracy. And
right, that's what I said. You can go down a rabbit hole of it. I mean, you can go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, with anything really. And the Kennedy family did speak out. At least Teddy did. That it probably was one shooter, and the official story does hold up with how he sees things.
It's definitely a complicated case. So, what do you think, levelers? Is there more to the story, or do you trust the official reports? And like Paul said, what at least one family member's going with, which is the official report. Hit us up on social media, or on our website. It's a classic debate. We can literally, like I said, talk days upon. What do you say, man? You want to move on to our next topic?
Let's do it. We'll do 9/11 next.
Let's talk 9/11. So I hate to even say this, because for me it's a hard one to even say. I wrote a little intro out for this one, man, to get my thoughts, together on it and everything. 9/11. Let's start by laying out some of the facts for those who might need a refresher, or for, and this is what I say, the youngins, out there that probably were in diapers or not even alive when this happened. September 11th, 2001. Terrorists hijacked 4 planes, crashing 2 into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City, 1 into the Pentagon, and 1, which was Flight 93, they made a movie about this one too, into a field in Pennsylvania after the passengers tried to overcome the hijackers. It was an extremely tragic day, no doubt. But over the years, a lot of people have questioned the official narrative. So there's a lot of speculation out there. Some believe the official story, while others think that there's, more beneath the surface. When I started with this, I remember I had just worked late the night before closing the store. I think I was working at Dick's Sporting Goods at the time. Either that or Petco. I don't know, either one. I was working in the retail store. I was a teenager. I worked that late night closing. That morning, I woke up and I looked at my phone. First thing I did, right, and my mom had called. I had 5 or 6 missed calls from my mother. And I'm like, she knows my work schedule. You know what I mean? She knows my work schedule. I talk to her every day. I only lived like right up the street from them. She called me again while I was, getting up, literally putting on my pants and going to get a drink out of the fridge. I think, I was on a soda kick at that time. So I was drinking like Mountain Dew first thing in the morning. You know what I mean? But she started calling. So I answered and I said, what's up? And she said, where are you? I said, I just woke up. I said, what's going on? And she's talking, in this like panicked voice, right? And she said, so you haven't turned on the TV yet? I'm like, no, I have just got out of bed. I was literally getting a drink. And so I went and, walked in. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. And I walked right into the little room, my main little living room is all it was, turned on the TV. Right when I turned it on, I'm seeing a picture I'm seeing the video that everybody had seen nowadays of the first tower, smoke coming out of it, right? And my mom's on the phone yelling, they're attacking us. They're attacking us. Somebody crashed into the World Trade Center. It wasn't 30 seconds after I turned on that TV, the second plane hit. And that's what I saw on the TV.
Damn.
Paul, I'm going to start with the biggest question that I want to know. Where were you on that day?
I was sitting in my 6th grade Mr. Epps social studies classroom. And so a levelers now, I'm a little bit younger. And so I was 11 years old. Some woman.
And old enough to understand.
Oh, for sure. And a woman came in the classroom and we had just put up these big TVs in every single classroom in my middle school. And she's like, turn on the TV. And this is probably 8:45 or something in the morning.
Yeah. Big box TVs.
Yeah. Back in the day.
And so,
old Mr. Ode is like trying to work. I don't think he's turned on the TV. And eventually we get it onto cable. And we see this large tower in New York City smoking, the first World Trade Center building that was hit. And we're all just like, whoa. And her son, the woman who ran in, worked in the World Trade Center. And that morning, his back was acting up. And he's like, I can't come to work. So she was like very panicked about that until she heard she was fine. But I think there's a lot of people, who like wondering, like, what happened to their loved ones. When I went to college, I met some people from New York and New Jersey who were more personally affected by that. But we're watching this and watched the second plane hit live, and no one knew what was going on. We're all kids and we're in probably the most appropriate class. We're in social studies for this. And the teacher's just like, I don't really know. Like, let's just kind of see what's going on, see what the news is saying. And probably by 12:30 that morning, my mom had pulled me out of school along with probably half the school as well. And so my mom was like, hey, we're 40 minutes outside DC. They just hit the Pentagon. We got to go away somewhere kind of remote. My grandparents lived in Western Pennsylvania. And she's like, we're going to take you up there because that's probably safe. And then that Flight 93 came down in Shankstown, which is not super close to where they were living, but like, she's like, oh, well, planes are even coming down in fields in rural PA.
Shankstown was like central, right? More central PA is right about. Is that where Shankstown is? North central?
Maybe I'm not entirely sure, but I know it was a rural field, and the closest place.
I don't know. I'm not. Besides what we talked about last week with Carmen Sandiego, I'm not big on geography. You know.
Well, yeah, but I think the point was she was going to take us all to Pennsylvania, and the plane came down there. She's like, "Well, I guess we'll stay." And then I had a very surreal experience. I later on became an educator for social studies and middle school. And September 11th, 2016, I was in a class with sixth graders. And I said, these kids were born in probably 2005 or so. And I was like, I was where you guys were, and I was watching it live. And I know the only memories that you guys have is probably, watching it on the TV or, film clips or, whatever. A lot of media has been made out of it. And, but that was something I got to do live and got to do. I watched live, witnessed
be live
when I was there. I was. So it was a pretty interesting experience. We had a lot of questions, and we had a really thoughtful discussion about it, and went really well. That was something my principal watched.
That kind of came full circle for you there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but as soon as it happened, a lot of conspiracy theories.
Yeah,
and I think the biggest one, at least in my opinion, was that 9/11 was a false flag operation, and that this was either done by the government or allowed to happen from the government, and that it would be used as a pretext to curb any sort of civil liberties, civil rights that we had, and really crack down on those. And you do see, whether or not that's true or not, full confession, I did used to be a big 9/11 truther. It sort of got me into the world of conspiracy theories, and I'm not so much that now, but at the time, kind of living through it and growing up in the wake of 9/11, I did see on the news a lot like, hey, we are passing this thing called the Patriot Act, and there's a lot of recordings that the government can do, and a lot of ways to track individuals where, under the guise of, well, this is for your protection, which never really sat right with me. I think there's a Benjamin Franklin quote of, those who would sacrifice liberty for freedom deserve neither, something along those lines. And that was something I heard early on and kind of stuck with me. And I was just like, oh my gosh, we're going to war with terrorism as a idea, I guess, Al Qaeda and all over the Middle East, and now we're attacking Iraq, and there's just a lot of things that's on from that. All the security theater that we see in airports, like you got to think of our shoes, because some guy was a shoe bomber, and
never had any of that before 9/11.
Yeah.
You could walk with your family right to the airport terminal where they were getting on.
Yeah, that's one of the funnest things to see in a older movie where people are like, oh my God, they're just going straight to the terminals. Where's all the TSA and the checking and
right?
Yeah.
You look at movies back then, but so to get into what you're saying, so some of the red flag, or it could be a false flag, sort of goes with, probably the biggest conspiracy is this was some type of government action, or that took place, because on the side of conspiracy theories, a lot of people point to the way the buildings collapsed, suggesting it looked more like a controlled demolition, right? And then there's also the controversial Building 7, which was never hit by a plane, still fell, a perfect collapse. So another point that they found was the presence of thermite, which is a compound used in demolition, was supposedly found in the debris. The Twin Towers specifically, there's a lot more happened with 9/11 than just the Twin Towers, but the Twin Towers were built to withstand a lot of stuff, and they were built to withstand something like a plane crash. So there's that infamous jet fuel can't, melt steel beams argument. Critics of the official narrative, though, claim that the temperatures reached, by burning jet fuel couldn't have weakened the steel structure to the point of collapse.
I've heard that, and that was
You can watch some of the videos, and there are some. You really got to think of what you're telling. We don't know what was going on in between floors with things crashing, jet fuel probably still spilling around, but there were some questionable outward explosions from the building. When you're watching it live, that were floors down. So I don't know, man. It's
there's footage of and both audio and video of, hey, there's like a lot of explosions going on down here, moments before the plane hits and like the lower levels of the building.
Yep. And that was even documented on a lot of the stuff by the firefighters that ran into those buildings and lost their lives.
Right. So I don't know. I don't know. I know that people use that as evidence of like, hey, this whole thing was a very planned demolition and destruction of the building. They started at the base, and that's why it came down in the way it did. I don't know why that happened, or what could be explained of why there was loud noises at the base of the building, and then the building
say it was construction around the area that was just echoing off is what they were hearing.
Could be, but I've never gotten a good reason of why the building 7 that was next to them, that was only 5 or 6 floors, I think, fell in a way that just all at once.
But it was. I'll give you the official narrative on that towards the end of what they say, which is it's easy to think of. It's essentially a lot of the debris from the other 2 buildings collapsing hit that building, causing it to collapse. But it's just the way it collapsed. You know what I mean? That's the same thing with the Twin Tower. It was just the way they collapsed. But let's not forget the Pentagon. The Pentagon, the hole in the building was much, much smaller than what you'd expect from a commercial airliner. Like much smaller. Some were led to believe that it was hit by something else, like a missile. And then there's the whole NORAD thing. Why were the fighter jets so slow to respond? You know what I mean? We're talking a commercial airliner traveling all that way in a no-fly zone, because there's certain areas around DC, no-fly zone. What, some say it points to stand-down order or a deliberate delay for, to push an agenda. And I think my biggest thing with that whole thing with the Pentagon is none of the security cameras that are on every single fucking corner around the Pentagon City, which is that area down there, picked up any pictures of the airliner. No clear picture of an airliner coming through and passing in, hitting the Pentagon.
Yeah.
A picture of a plane at all. So
one of the most, like Fort Knox and the Pentagon are like probably the most secure places on the country. The only thing I've seen is like a very grainy image of something hitting it.
That's all you can see. It's very grainy. And I don't know. I went down a rabbit hole on that before because, this was our era. This has happened in our time. So, and the computer analysis of the size just doesn't add up to a commercial airliner. And the other big thing too, man, is think about these pilots that had these. Supposedly, according to official reports, they came into the U.S. just not even a year prior and started taking training lessons in Florida. I think was a lot of them. They took flight training, so became flights on these puddle jumpers essentially.
Right.
So you're telling me they had the skill and everything, especially in New York City with all the high rise, to hit those perfectly, and then also the Pentagon being the biggest, to fly that low of an angle without touching anything to mess up that plane and hitting directly dead center into the Pentagon. Amateur ass pilots.
I have a friend of mine who started teaching together, and so obviously I didn't just do one 9/11 lesson. I did a number of them, and we talked about it one time while we were doing our teacher training times. And I had a friend, and my friend of mine was a bit older than me, and he was living in DC at the time, and he's like, my experience was not that of the official story. He's like, just to say, he's like, can I talk about my personal experience of being in DC, being very close to the Pentagon that day? The teacher's like, ooh, I would talk about your personal experiences, I guess. Like, he was being very coy about it, but he's like, didn't know what way a plane hit that building. He's like, I saw he's like, how do you go down that level? Because when the only videos you kind of see of it is of a level thing hitting
Right.
it. And I don't know how familiar you are with Pentagon City, but there's a lot of things going on there. It's not
If you don't live around here like we do,
yeah.
you don't, and you've never been in that area, there's just no way, dude. I just don't see how not one of these cameras picked up the plane. How, or it did, right? It did pick up a picture, but like you said, it's grainy as fuck. I get our technology wasn't the greatest in 2001 compared to now, but why is everything else so clear? But that is grainy. You know what I mean? Like everything else in the photos are clear. But on the flip side, man, we got to consider the evidence, against the theories. For starters, structural engineers, demolition experts, they've largely debunked the whole controlled demolition theory. They explained that the impact of the planes combined with the fires, the jet fuel, it was enough to weaken the steel structures, causing the collapse. And when Building 7, like I said, it was heavily damaged by debris from the Twin Towers and actually had an uncontrolled fire for hours because they were focusing on the Twin Towers. They didn't even know Building 7 had issues. Debris came down and caught it on fire. So that could have caused the collapse. Then the one I mentioned about the thermite, right? Most of the samples that, supposedly contain the thermite, they were contaminated. And the intense fires from the jet fuel, they said could weaken those stills without needing thermite. So don't know for that.
Yeah, the jet fuel can't melt steel beams. It can. The sort of estimated temperature is well above what would be needed to, if not, like melt them, like, not like immediately, but definitely weaken them in a way that whatever the weight is above the building that was hit can come down and,
Right.
And you saw what happened.
And we know, just like, everybody played with Legos as kids, everything. If you collapse one part of the site, it'll all collapse and come down. It can happen. As for the Pentagon, while the hole might, it does seem small. I'll say that. I'll be the first. The Pentagon's my biggest thing. Like, I just don't understand that one, but the damage to the building and the debris found at the site do match that of a plane crash. Now, I do have a friend that was there picking up bodies, saving people right after it happened. Called from his military unit down there, and he was there, and he says there was plane parts and everything that fit that description, but he never saw any fuselage or anything like that. So could they have been placed before they called everybody in? Who knows? And for the NORAD response, at that point in time, if you've ever watched the Flight 93 movie, if you've ever watched any of the World Trade movies, our defense and stuff, we were never prepared for anything like that. It was a time of chaos, confusion. There was no protocol, no clear protocol for dealing with multiple hijackings like that. They had protocol for dealing with a single hijacking, never for 4 planes. And who knows how many more didn't happen because they grounded the planes, but it took them forever to stop, to ground all flights. But, we just weren't prepared back then. You know what I mean? What we have now, like you said, TSA, none of this stuff existed, and it's all because of 9/11. We had none of this. And I hear a lot of people now, they say, there's just no way that people could have walked on the plane. Yeah, you pretty much could. I remember my first plane flight, people were smoking on the plane.
Yep.
So it's
in the smoking section,
right?
Yeah, and there's a couple things of people saying, "Oh, well, there are some people who got rich, or some, for like some securities exchange relating to the buildings, and that it seems like some people had prior knowledge." Again, that's a lot of that can be chalked up to the. Wasn't that strange? It's like it is, but I don't know if really that proves anything. If you really, unless that's something you really want to believe, and you can find reasons for anything. And they did disable the transponders on the plane, and it just look at blips among hundreds or thousands. How many planes were in the Eastern Seaboard time?
Dude, yeah. And if you watch those movies, like you can just see, and they show like real footage. Some of these documentaries, especially of the blips, and it's just like, especially DC, man. That's what this is. You got to think of how many planes are flying around between here and New York City every single day.
Yeah,
crazy. And no, it's one of those. Either way, man. It's a topic that it always gets people talking, no matter which way. And
absolutely,
I don't have an official theory. I don't know. I still haven't ever made up my mind. Really, it's one of those things. Just like I don't know.
Like I said, I used to be deep into it, and these days I try to have a more even keeled thoughts about things, including this, and
yep,
and not.
That's what happens with age, man. That's what happens when we start getting older. You start asking, because I used to be the same. I know exactly what you mean. But like you were saying about this, maybe potentially some people making money off of this. Some companies, maybe securities. So we move on to another heavy hitting topic that has to do with security. Jeffrey Epstein,
or a lack thereof,
right? I mean, we do have a mysterious death here with the Epstein. This is one of those cases that has sparked a massive amount of speculation and conspiracy theories. If you hop on X right now, I guarantee you somewhere in the top 50 trending hashtag is Epstein or Epstein Island, right? I mean,
yeah, it's one of the most.
There's something linked to everybody with this.
Where you really see is one of the social media, or one of the conspiracy theories in like the social media era, where it won. I think a lot of people on both sides of the aisle kind of united behind that, because it's one where it's one of the, I would assume is one of the most widely believed conspiracy theories that he did not actually kill himself.
Before we get into
when we at least set it up,
let me say, so for those of you that don't know what happened with Epstein, right? So Jeffrey Epstein, he was a financier, I guess. He was a convicted sex offender. He was arrested in July of 2019 on federal charges of sex trafficking minors in Florida and New York. The accusers say that the billionaire's private paradise of Little St. James in the U.S. Virgin Islands was the center of an international sex trafficking. So the guests to Epstein's islands came from across the world and from the highest ranks of society. And you can look, this is facts. Celebrities, scientists, members of royal families, touching down in a private jet and boarding a helicopter to go to this island. The owner, Jeffrey Epstein, he liked to call the island Little St. Jeff. Did you know that? That's what he liked to call it. Little St. Jeff.
I didn't know that.
The locals around the U.S. Virgin Islands, they called it Pedophile Island. The locals all called it that. So this island, you can look this up on the Google, Maps, Google Earth. This island has this temple, like a temple type structure at one end of it. That's not all what he had. Not at all what he had listed and drawn out when he had to obtain a permit to create this, thing. The permit he had, he labeled it octagonal shaped music pavilion. And I'm telling you, if you look at this thing, it's definitely not that, right? People have described this as the entrance to an underground lair, an altar to an Egyptian deity, a burial ground for his parents, and even a site of, ritual sex abuse and grooming. Well, we do know for a fact that he was grooming young girls. I think 12 years old was the youngest documented, at least during the trial. But he was convicted, and then on August 10th, 2019, he was found dead in his jail cell in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City. And the official ruling was suicide by hanging. And that right there is where the controversy really kicks in, right? Many people, including some high-profile individuals, believe there's more to the story than what they've officially reported. So let's talk about, the arguments for and against that, the conspiracy surrounding it. He did have connections with numerous high-profile figures, including politicians, celebrities. I mean, he had Stephen Hawking, you name it. There was a lot of people.
Yeah, the list came out, and there's some pretty shocking names on it of what it is.
Yeah, and that list is exactly what has led to the speculation that the death was orchestrated to prevent him from revealing more damaging information about these people linked to Epstein, right? So,
And so when you have so many celebrities, I don't think it's rational to say that every single person on that list, or every single person that appeared with him, or every single person that went to his island or whatever was all for like having the sex with the underage girls. I mean, you got to think that somebody was, and you don't have so you have this large list of people, and like think like with Bill Gates, like, is Bill Gates down there for that, or is he down there to talk about like some sort of like investment opportunity or something? And because Epstein made a name for himself, like, to us, no one knew really who he was until we heard about all these revelations, and they're like, oh wow, he actually knows like dozens and dozens of people that are household names, whether in the political, entertainment, tech sectors, like all over the place. And so, because that was like how he,
I mean, we know for a fact,
rich, but
we know off the strap, we know for a fact that Stephen Hawking's been on the island, Prince Andrew's been on the island, Bill Clinton's been on the island. So many people have been on the island, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing,
but what were they there for or not?
Right, you can't prove that. But the thing that's also weird about this whole island is what I say, with all these celebrities and everybody that's going there, these billionaires and heads of heads, right, going to this island.
For sure.
All of the workers on the island had to sign NDAs, were sworn to secrecy, were not allowed to look at anybody directly. Like, they had all these rules and regulations. They weren't allowed to go. Like, there was so much stuff. Like, why all that if you were just hosting gatherings or why do you have to go to that extent? Yeah.
And I wonder if that was like, if he thought that this would happen one day. He's like, eventually my luck's going to run out and a lot of awful things are going to be exposed. Maybe I could untarnish a reputation of someone who was there and by not having anyone look at them, even though there's lists and stuff, and I'm sure that the people that worked there were questioned afterwards, and they just had all this.
They were. In the trial, they questioned a lot of the workers, and they said that daily, his little boat, the boat that he had that went from the mainland of the U.S. Virgin Island, where the airport was, to his island, was, I don't remember what it was called, but it had something to do with that Giselle Max, her name was something, Little Giselle or something like that was the name of that boat. And they said that every day, hundreds of this was their statement, young girls, normally looking like young high schoolers, were brought to the island. And nobody ever knew what happened with it.
Nobody ever saw them like go back.
Authorities always questioned what they couldn't really do anything. He owned the island, it was out of there. Whatever happened, they weren't going over there, so they were probably paid off. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Let's be real here. But there was just so much with these young girls. Like I said, the trial document, that they have documented as long as 12. Some of the workers said that some of them looked 7, 8 years old, and that they said that they would be only walking around in underwear, bikinis, or nothing at all. If they were in the pool area, they weren't allowed to wear anything. That was Epstein's rules for that. They had to be, fully nude. And that was to make sure no contamination or anything got in the pools could be kept pristine. Right? Come on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So either way, so when he was found on the night of Epstein's death, the 2 cameras outside of his cell, they, reportedly malfunctioned, right? The guards assigned to check on him, because he was on a check, they fell asleep. So that's raised suspicion about the foul play, whether it was actually a murder made to look like a suicide. All the memes, right? You're going to get Epstein. That's going around.
And this may never have came to at least the level it is a conspiracy theory if the cameras were working, or if the guards were there. They could be like, no, I was there all night. It comes down again to the, well, hey, isn't that odd? that we don't have video footage of what happened after the the night he was killed in a New York City level prison with bar, like all of these things failed.
So
And
you also got to remember that he was found injured in his cell in July of 2019. And it was initially treated as a suicide attempt, right? But Epstein, he claimed that he was attacked. So that added to the suspicion that someone wanted him dead.
yeah. Also, what someone may say if they are trying to end their lives and not having, oh no, I wasn't, it wasn't a suicide, I was attacked. And be like, all right, well, that I guess more common in jail. And but I don't know, a lot of people that I've seen, like high-ranking individuals, including the mayor of New York City at the time, Bill de Blasio, said that when all was said and done about what the official story was and how some things don't line up with that, he's like, there's a lot more to it. And he is far from the only person of note to look at like the official story, why it might not be official, and say, yeah, this doesn't really make sense. The level of damage that he could have done to so many prestigious, respected people is unknown, but it could have been absolutely devastating for some of like the leaders of society.
Well, we do know that Epstein's mental health was, they said it was, deteriorated significantly after his arrest, right? So being in a high stress environment and facing, the possibility of spending the rest of your life in prison, could definitely lead to suicidal tendencies.
For sure.
Especially
to be known around the world, at least definitely in the US, as one of the biggest child groomers, pedophiliac, like that would make a lot of people really question of what their future is going to look like.
Yeah, and the correctional facility, right, where he was at, they had already, before he was ever sentenced to be there awaiting trial, right? The whole facility was being criticized for being understaffed and overworked. So that also supports the theory that, the guards, they were supposed to monitor him, but they had reportedly worked a lot of overtime and were exhausted, which could explain their failure to check on him and them really falling asleep, right?
Yeah.
We've all been at work. Everybody's been at work and been, wanting to fall asleep or probably fell asleep. And it happens no matter what job you're in. I don't care what job you're doing, as a doctor, whatever, you'll find that little time just to, get your eyes shut for a minute. Next thing you know, it's 10, 15 minutes later. And usually normal jobs, whatever, you go on about your day, right? Security, then something like this happens in that time. Now it's a conspiracy.
Right. Especially, it could be tough, especially awake overnight kind of staffing is sometimes the awake part isn't always there, and working weird hours and potentially overtime stuff. If they're as understaffed as they were, that could be understandable if someone falls asleep during that kind of time of day or night. But there have been a few high-profile people that have, I don't want to say been punished, but or seen jail time. But I think the Prince Andrew of the United Kingdom was one of the people that was not only on his list and was friendly with them and Giselle, but was singled out personally by one of
the girl on the island.
Now woman, as someone that was there for sex with underage.
He claimed sexual abuse against him. That whole case. Mm-hmm. My wife is a royal freak, literally a royal. I don't know why. I told her 1776 baby, but but so she actually they were going to court over it. Like he was facing court and settled it out of court, paid her off, and that swept under the rug.
Now the Queen, though, before she died, did strip him of every sort of royal title, but duties at least. And I think it's kind of known in the Windsor family that yeah, this guy was definitely part of that, and one of who knows how many.
Any, right?
Mhm.
It's it's definitely a complex, thing. There's a lot of information and misinformation out there, right, on Epstein. So whether you believe in conspiracy theories, it's clear that Epstein case has left many, many questions unanswered. We're still waiting on the exact list of who visited the island. They haven't released the names. All they have is a flight list, I think is what it is. It doesn't say that list. They have that list of who was on it, and they aren't releasing it. Why? Why have they still not released that list? And like you said, that's too damaging to everybody on it. And the minute you put one name out, no matter who it is, because everybody's so high profile, it's game over. Because that person's going to no, here they go. All the fingers start pointing out.
Well, I think we're still waiting. Giselle Maxim is in prison now, and people have joked that she's gonna get Epstein. Yeah. So what is? Does she have any leverage that she can use to help herself? In terms of naming names.
Hey, you know what? You know who may be able to help out now? And maybe it's coincidence we're having this episode. Julian Assange, released from prison. He's found out tons of information on everybody. He's back home. He's in Australia.
Yeah. So WikiLeaks coming back up.
Guess what? We may find out what we've all been wanting to know. That's what you know what I mean? I'm sure part of his plea deal that he made was you can't ever look us up again.
Right.
That's why it continues to be such a hot topic, of discussion across the world, literally across the world, because world leaders from everywhere have been to Epstein Island.
Yeah. What do you say? A lot of them have said that he didn't kill himself. And
it's abused that then. I don't know. Did he? Did he not?
Yeah. Well, I think that will transition us into the last conspiracy theory that we had, MKUltra. That is a conspiracy theory that was proved to be true. So
MKUltra.
And I know this may be one that not all of our levelers are familiar with, but I know you've been doing the introductions. You want to tell them a little about MKUltra?
Yeah, man. So for those that don't know, MKUltra, because again, everybody's different ages, and this was like something ran from like the 50s or the 70s. Either way, for those that don't know, MKUltra was a top secret CIA program, ran from 1950s, like I said, to the 1970s. It was aimed at developing mind control techniques using drugs like LSD. Right? It sounds fun, but it sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel, right? I mean, but this was real life. So the aim was to develop techniques for interrogation and brainwashing. The project details you can read are chilling, involving unwitting subjects, unethical practices. It's well documented that MKUltra was real. In 1975, church committee, a Senate committee, exposed the extent, of all these experiments. So yeah, the CIA conducted experiments involving drugs like LSD, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and more without any of the subjects' consent. They were just trying to figure out if they can control and manipulate minds.
Highly illegal human experimentation of both U.S. and Canadian citizens in the fight to win over communism. That was a big Red Scare time. This lasted, like you said, from the 50s to the 70s, specifically 53 to 73. So that goes over the Eisenhower administration, JFK, Lyndon Johnson, and only ended in 73 because that is the year of Watergate. And the CIA director that year was like, we got to start throwing these documents in the fire and the shredder, but not all of them.
Yeah, that's the thing, man, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they destroyed a lot of MKUltra files. That certainly doesn't help to clear things up. It only adds to, the mystery, the speculation.
Right. And so just using on unwitting participants, LSD, but not only LSD, barbiturates, amphetamine, heroin, psilocybin, alcohol, among other. And
they say even some of those experiments, not necessarily MKUltra, but I'm not trying to go off topic here, but just for because Fort Detrick had some weird shit going on too with some of the experiments, back in the day. So,
yeah, I mean, MK Ultra is only a continuation of a lesser known Project Artichoke, which is, I think it was only lasted a few years before it evolved into MK Ultra. But there's been a number of experiments, tests, and all sorts of ways to sort of get an upper hand on the communists, the USSR, and all the things that were done to that we see as maybe science fiction. I don't spoiler alert, there was no mind control that was successful for the 20 years of MK Ultra.
Yeah, see, that's what's crazy though. See, that's where people say that while the experiment they were unethical, they were horrifying, they didn't succeed in developing anything with over 20 years. That's what they say. What was burned up? Did they actually find something? They burned it up, and only certain people have access to this now. Could that be a thing? I mean, I don't know.
That'd be kind of crazy. I mean, it would spur a number of media portrayals. So the Manchurian Candidate, was made a while ago, and then they made a remake with Denzel Washington.
Stranger Things.
11 was an MK Ultra.
That whole experimenting thing was based off of MK Ultra. So it's had a pop culture impact.
Yeah, because it's just a mind blowing thing that if evidence of this didn't come out, we'd be discussing this. Like, hey, did you hear about this supposed government that where they try to mind control people and use them as like torture? And we'd be like, well, that's a pretty wild conspiracy theory. But it actually, we have proof of this. There was an investigation, and evidence of this coming up has been brought to light through the Freedom of Information Act and some of the commissions that happened after Watergate. And so now we know that this dark chapter in our national history is not just something that people imagined, especially some of the people that lived through it. Like, oh, the government gave me all this LSD and alcohol and barbiturates. It's like, all right, you need to talk to someone. No, they just
made me just think
victims.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but maybe just think you talk about this, and we're talking about how things like the Manchurian Candidate, Stranger Things. You watch The Boys? Is that not like something like an MK Ultra? Like they got that from MK, like testing. They were taking children and injecting them with different things just to see what would happen with their bodies.
I've never seen the first two seasons of it, but I think that this idea is sort of in our psyche, maybe not specifically MK Ultra, because not everyone knows about it, but the idea that the government would go to great lengths to make super soldiers or to have some sort of ops type of technology and a way to get a Manchurian Candidate, someone to not know that they are a sleeper cell of one, and on some password or however they activate them, they would start to make that switch, and it's all right, now I'm going to go assassinate this world leader. It's certainly something that is really sensational, and hopefully nothing ever came out of it.
Well, we don't know. I think the biggest question still with that is what was in those burned up files. What did they burn first that was so or were they just grabbing random files? So we don't know. And they haven't really. That was never really documented. But
yeah, that is something.
Like you said, with all the
open question,
with all the pop culture and everything, man, surrounding MK Ultra or similarities to MK Ultra, it's easy to get swept up, in the more sensational aspects. But it's crucial to remember that, the real human costs that happened during this time. Many people suffered during these experiments. Their stories are important too. We don't really ever get those, made into the fun movies or books or anything.
Yeah. And I do want to add I think the heart of conspiracy theories sort of overall is that we cling to something that makes sense of like an increasingly chaotic and senseless world that we find ourselves in. And I think ironically, it's more comforting for some people to think that like a big business or government or, important person is controlling the things behind the curtain than the randomness of a tragedy. Like we can't get mad or angry at randomness. Because oftentimes the people with those answers are dead, which is why we can still talk about these things that happened decades ago in a, official story versus a conspiracy theory type of discussion, because we can't talk to the 9/11 terrorists or Lee Harvey Oswald or Jack Ruby, Jeffrey Epstein, the CIA agents who did MKUltra, because it's like, all dead. So look,
Wait. Can we know? Can we? Is that thing out there? We just don't know it? Because for some people, they say that, some of these stuff that's just from MKUltra and stuff, they're now using them nowadays to be able to go into the past and talk and live that life, Look, I'm opening up a whole new conspiracy theory now with everything. I think we'll go.
Well, that is the entire Assassin's Creed premise, is that you can go back as your ancestors who were in
see
this.
what happened and talk and figure it out. Exactly,
Yeah.
man. That's what brings us into the video game realm of this. But I don't know. Levelers, what do you think? Was MKUltra a full-blown conspiracy, or is it really just a very dark chapter in history? Let us know your thoughts. I think the lack of transparency fuels the conspiracy fire.
Yeah.
No matter what conspiracy theory it is, the lack of transparency always comes at you. There's always something that was hidden somewhere, or some way it was supposedly covered up.
All right. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'd say, levelers, we unpacked a lot today from 9/11, JFK, Epstein, MKUltra. These theories show how complex and divided opinions can be. If you really want to go down rabbit holes. At the end of the day, it's up to each of us to look at the evidence and make our own informed decisions, what we feel is the right way. So I think that's going to be it for today's episode, man. Remember, share your thoughts and theories on our website, highlevelchronicles.com, or social media at HLC Podcast 420. We love hearing from you levelers, and whether you're leveling up in a game, lighting up a new strain, or diving into a new show, stay curious, keep exploring. We'll be back next week. More high-level content coming your way. Until then, stay leveled up. We are out.
Thanks for listening to High Level Chronicles. See you next time.
Thank you again for listening to High Level Chronicles. Please help us grow by leaving us a review wherever you listen to us at, whether it's Spotify, iTunes, Alexa. Your reviews will help our show grow and help us reach a broader audience. Also, we are always looking for new show sponsors, so please reach out if you're interested. You can hit us on our social media or email us info@highlevelchronicles.com. Thanks again for listening.